You've been told your whole life that communication is the ultimate key to healthy relationships. That if you just explain yourself clearly enough, with enough logic and empathy, people will finally understand your perspective. It's a lie. A comforting, highly destructive lie that keeps you trapped in a cycle of emotional exhaustion. Think about the last time you set a boundary. Did you simply say no, or did you immediately follow it up with a desperate 5-minute monologue, detailing exactly why you couldn't do the favor, attend the event, or take the call? You felt that familiar panic rising in your chest, the frantic need to control how the other person perceived your refusal. You packaged your boundary in an apology. You made yourself smaller so their ego could remain comfortable. Let's get something straight right now. This isn't politeness. It isn't being a considerate person. It is a trauma response. Carl Jung observed that many of our so-called social virtues are actually just socially acceptable neuroses. The compulsion to constantly explain your choices, your mood shifts, or your need for isolation is a glaring symptom of a severed connection with your own internal authority. You are unconsciously acting out an old, deeply embedded childhood script, the belief that your reality is only valid if an external authority approves of it. When you over-explain, you are handing the gavel over to a judge who has absolutely no jurisdiction over your life. You are literally begging for permission to exist. If you're completely drained from managing everyone else's perception of you, you are in the right place. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and leave a comment below with the one thing you are tired of justifying. Because today, we are going to dismantle this psychological prison. We are moving past the theory. I am going to show you exactly how to reclaim your autonomy and wield silence as the ultimate shield against manipulation. People who chronically over-explain usually grew up in environments where their subjective experience was systematically invalidated. When you cried, you were being dramatic. When you were hurt, you were told it wasn't that bad. Your psyche adapted to survive. You learned to build an impenetrable fortress of logic and justification around every emotion, hoping that if your argument was airtight, you wouldn't be rejected, mocked, or abandoned. You carried that survival mechanism into adulthood, but adulthood doesn't require airtight arguments to justify your feelings. The moment you start treating your inner life like a court case to be won, you have already lost. You stop living from your core and start performing for an audience. And manipulators, they absolutely love an over-explainer. They feed on your need to be understood. Let's break down exactly what happens in the psyche of a manipulative person when you start justifying your boundaries. They do not hear your empathy. They do not appreciate your transparency. They hear a negotiation. When you say, "I can't help you this weekend because I'm just so exhausted from work," you think you are setting a polite boundary. The manipulator hears, "If I can prove that you aren't actually that tired, or if I make my crisis seem bigger than your exhaustion, you will cave." You just handed them the exact blueprint to dismantle your no. You gave them a loophole. This is the insidious nature of over-explaining. It turns your subjective reality into a debate, and in a debate, the most ruthless person wins. Carl Jung pointed out that neurosis is often a substitute for legitimate suffering. The frantic anxiety you feel when you over-explain is the neurosis. It is a defense mechanism designed to avoid the legitimate suffering of someone being mad at you. You twist your own truth to make it palatable for them. You say, "I'm just tired," when you are actually profoundly disrespected. You laugh off a passive-aggressive insult to keep the peace. You apologize for taking up space. Every single time you do this, you commit a micro-betrayal against yourself. Your ego, the functional center of your consciousness, mutates into a servant of external validation. You lose access to your true self. You forget what you actually feel because you are too busy calculating what you are allowed to feel based on the reactions of the people in the room. So, how do we break this? Theory is utterly useless when your nervous system is hijacked, when you are standing in front of a demanding boss, a toxic partner, or an intrusive family member. Your brain will scream at you to explain yourself. You must have a tactical response ready. Here is the protocol. The next time you decline a request, state your position. No, I won't be able to attend. Or, I am not comfortable with this arrangement. And then, you do the hardest thing in the world. You close your mouth. Do not soften it. Do not add the word because. The silence that follows will feel excruciating. Your heart will race. Your mind will frantically draft 10 different apologies. You will feel an overwhelming urge to fill the void. Bite your tongue if you have to. That intense, suffocating anxiety is not a sign that you are being a bad person. It is the literal sensation of your childhood trauma leaving your body. It is the friction of your internal authority being reconstructed, muscle by neuromuscle. Let the silence sit there. Make it heavy. Force them to deal with the discomfort of your boundary. What happens when you finally hold that silence? I need to be brutally honest with you. It gets much worse before it gets better. The moment you stop feeding a manipulator with your justifications, you cut off their primary oxygen supply. They rely on your over-explaining to find the cracks in your armor. When you simply say, "No, that doesn't work for me," and stop talking, you leave a massive, echoing void. And human beings, especially toxic ones, are terrified of the void. They will panic. Their immediate response won't be respect. It will be escalation. Expect the guilt-tripping text messages. Wow. Okay. Guess I'm not important then. Expect the sudden character assassinations. You've become really cold lately. Or, you're acting so selfish. They will probe your silence, trying to provoke a reaction, trying to drag you back into the courtroom where they get to play the judge. This is the critical moment. Do not break. This escalation is not a sign that your boundary was wrong. It is the undeniable, glaring proof that your previous dynamic was built entirely on your submission. You didn't have a mutual relationship. You had a hostage situation masked as a friendship, a marriage, or a workplace dynamic. Carl Jung wrote extensively about the shadow, the repressed, denied aspects of ourselves and our interactions. By refusing to explain yourself, you drag the relationship's shadow out into the harsh daylight. You expose the underlying, unwritten contract they had with you. I will love you, but only if you remain small, predictable, and easily managed. When you tear up that contract, a purge happens. Your silence acts as a ruthless, highly efficient psychological filter. People who genuinely care about your well-being will accept your no. They might be surprised by your new demeanor, but they will adjust. But the people who disappear, the ones who throw tantrums, play the victim, or give you the silent treatment in return, let them walk. Hold the door wide open for them. Their exit is not a loss. It is a massive return on your energetic investment. You will have to grieve the illusion of these relationships. You spent years explaining your heart out, draining your own life force, thinking that if you just found the perfect combination of words, they would finally see you. They never were going to. They didn't misunderstand your words. They actively ignored your value. This transition is terrifying. Your ego will scream that you are ruining your life, that everyone is going to leave you. You will feel a profound sense of isolation. But understand this, it isn't the loneliness of being unwanted. It is the necessary, clearing solitude of individuation. You are emptying the room of people who only loved your compliance. making space for the internal authority that will finally respect your sovereignty. The only way to stop the hemorrhage of your own life force is to reclaim your internal authority. This is not an intellectual exercise. It is a violent shift in your psychological center of gravity. You must move it from the unpredictable periphery of external approval back to the core of your own self. For Carl Jung, this reclamation is the definitive mark of psychological maturity. It is the exact moment you stop looking at the people around you, asking, "Will they understand why I feel this way?" and start stating, "It does not matter if they understand. This is true for me." Understand the distinction here. Internal authority is the absolute antithesis of compulsive self-explanation. It is not arrogance. Arrogance is loud. It is just another desperate mask for insecurity, a demand to be seen as superior. Internal authority is quiet. It is the deep, unshakable conviction that your subjective experience does not need to be negotiated at a bargaining table. But transitioning to this state requires you to walk through fire. Jung noted that individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, requires traversing a desert of inner solitude. You will have to experience the terrifying firsts. The first time you hold a no without a trace of guilt. The first time you change your mind and refuse to provide a 3-part thesis defending your decision. The first time you walk away from a draining interaction without apologizing for your exit. You will have to sit in the excruciating discomfort of knowing someone is actively misunderstanding you, judging you, or painting you as the villain, and you will have to choose to remain entirely silent. And then, you will realize something profound. You didn't die. You survived their misunderstanding. You remained whole. When you stop trying to convince people of your worth, a paradox occurs. The less you seek their approval, the more undeniable your presence becomes. An integrated person does not beg to be understood. They communicate, they express, but they never attempt to convince, because their words are sourced from a solid core, not a hidden deficit. The world operates on energy and underlying psychological structure, not on the logical arguments you present. When you constantly justify yourself, you emit a frequency of submission. You signal to the room that your boundaries are up for debate. But psychological integrity has weight. It has density. When you simply say, "This doesn't work for me," and let the silence hang in the air, you stop begging for space. You occupy it. This shift alters the mechanics of every room you walk into. The people around you will unconsciously perceive that you are no longer a character they can edit. The true test of individuation does not happen in a therapist's office or while reading a philosophy book. It happens tomorrow. It happens the moment your phone rings and you see a name that historically drains your energy. It happens when you are asked to commit to something you have absolutely no capacity for. Here is your protocol. I call it the sovereign pause. When the demand comes, you will state your boundary. "No, I won't be able to make it," or "I cannot take this project on right now." And then, you will do the most terrifying thing your people-pleasing brain can imagine. You will close your mouth. You will brutally sever the word because from your vocabulary, your heart will hammer against your ribs. Your nervous system will trigger a 5-alarm fire, screaming that this person is going to hate you, abandon you, or smear your name. You will feel a suffocating, almost violent urge to fill the silence with excuses, apologies, and self-deprecation. Bite your tongue, swallow the justification. Let the silence sit in the air and make the room heavy. That excruciating physical discomfort you are feeling in your chest, that is not you being a bad person. That is the literal sensation of your childhood trauma breaking. It is the friction of your internal authority being reconstructed. You are teaching your nervous system that another human being's disappointment is not a lethal threat to your survival. Watch exactly what happens to the energy dynamic when you hold this silent line. Manipulators, narcissists, and psychic vampires run on the fuel of your over-explanation. They use your justifications to find loopholes, to debate your reality, and to wear you down. When you give them a calm, unbothered boundary with zero explanation, you strip them of all their ammunition. They will hit a brick wall. They might escalate. They might call you selfish. Let them. Their anger is nothing more than a tantrum over losing their favorite puppet. But observe the healthy people in your life. Unconsciously, they will adjust their posture. They will stop treating you like someone they can easily push around and begin treating you with a quiet, undeniable reverence. Why? Because human beings possess an animalistic radar for internal structure. When you stop desperately pleading for others to understand your perspective, you stop emitting the frequency of a subordinate. You begin to emanate the aura of someone who owns themselves entirely. You stop begging for space, and you simply occupy it. Carl Jung warned us that to find ourselves, we must be willing to displease the collective. You are not put on this earth to stand trial in the courtroom of other people's expectations. You are the judge, the jury, and the sole author of your reality. Stop betraying yourself to keep a false peace. Reclaim your sovereignty. The world will adjust.